going to have a launch with press and crowdsourcing video and that sort of thing. So if you go to www.fairvote.ca, this is what you will find now. And we still have, you know, the shell of the old site, so all that same information is still there for you. But we're going to use it as a public education piece now. So it takes you through there, our call to action to sign the declaration, and it scrolls through these slides so that people can kind of get their head around. We started off with the problem, you know, letting people know that there's an issue out there. We need people to get their heads around that. And then we can go into, I'll just let this finish through this slide again. The call to, and make every vote count, which is what our tagline, and sign the declaration. Then we can go into what is proportional representation, and we have the same sort of thing, and it gives us a little bit more information and tells people what it is that we're asking for. And you can slow it down, you can stop it as it goes. If you notice on the right-hand side, right now where the cursor is, we are going to continue to build on this website right to 2015 and continue to offer more and more information as we go along. And so that will come out, that sticker, and we'll start to put in some more navigation buttons, like where the parties stand. We're going to have a big spreadsheet to be able to look at candidates, what they're doing, where all the parties stand, so that we can use our list in 2015 and, you know, our engaged, politically engaged list to leverage votes and to talk about proportional representation and candidates who support proportional representation. So then when you go down underneath, fair voting matters too. The other thing that we're doing is, you know, we've been talking about proportional representation out here with our campaign and trying to get people's heads around proportional representation. And we've made this decision that we're actually going to tie our campaign into other people's campaign, because proportional representation lays the foundation so that we can all work on our campaigns, right? Once we have a seat at the table, once we have input into policy. So if you go, we start off with Fair Vote Matters. Oh, you know what, before we go there, hold on 1 minute. The other thing that we're going to have on this page are 3 motion graphics videos that explain different systems of proportional representation. When you click on them though, if you want to click on one of those videos, we just have, right now, we're raising money, that's part of the crowdsourcing, so there's a bunch of places on this website where we're asking people to help us fund some of these projects, because that's how we survive on fundraising. So those are in the works. The other thing that we have underneath are all of our testimonials still. If you click on any of those, you will get the testimonial. Yeah, if you click on one of them, sure. And then you can click off of them. This whole site has also been recreated in French. Yeah, if you click off of there, and you go back up to the top, you can see that there's a French button. Let's not go in, okay. We have a mirror site in French now, which is something that people have been asking for and that we've done. We've separated out the sites. So if we go back into the English, yeah. Okay, so let's go to Fair Voting Matters to the environment. We have gone out to some environmentalists, key environmentalists in Canada, and asked for some of their opinions. These graphics are going to help us with social media and that to promote some of these issues that we're working on. So when you scroll down, if you don't mind scrolling down there, Andrew, we have a lot of research. We have Anita Nickerson, who you all know, has spent a lot of time pulling together all of this research, looking at countries around the world and how they do on these issues when they have proportional representation. And Aaron Liebhardt, who Bruce Heyer was talking about this morning, has an amazing book that he's looked at, you know, years and years and years of democracy, different countries with proportional representation, and all of the research around it. And he's got some really good numbers that support what we're doing here. And then when you keep on going down, you can either click on any of these people and you have some questions and answers and some opinion pieces by them. So if you go back up to the top, we have the same thing for women. This research from Aaron Leapart finds that women, democracies that have proportional representation have 8% more representation in the government of women. So we're concentrating on that as well. We have the Monocracy trailer that was done by, can you just scroll down a little bit more here? Yeah, Gretchen Kelbaugh here, and some information on women. So you can keep going through it, and we'll go through the other two very quickly. Income inequality. We have Peter Venton, Linda McQuaid, Maud Barlow giving information. We have research about income inequality there. So it's a great resource for people when you want to talk to friends and talk to other Canadians about why this is so important. This is going to be a great resource for us. And the economy as well. We have Hugh Siegel on the economy. We're going to have some more economists. We wanted to get this website up and running. So what else is there to show you? Okay, so the last thing that I want to show you here is see what's happening in your riding. This is going to be an interactive map where you're going to have all the ridings. You're going to be able to click in them. You're going to be able to see the candidates. You're going to see the incumbents, where everybody stands. There'll be some calls to action in there. And we'll be building on that. That will be coming live shortly. We have some photographs always that we'll be updating. And if you go down a little bit further, we have an event calendar for all the chapters across Canada. So everybody can send me their information, and I will keep this updated so that we can see how active Fair Vote is across the country, because we have 33 chapters. We have all these people working. We sent out over 400 people to visit MPs. We want people to see how robust this organization really is. We're not, a lot of people say we're a little organization. Well, we're out there and we're working hard and we're growing, so we want people to see that. So that's what I wanted to show you right now. This week we will have the crowdsourcing video coming online. I will be sending out an email to everybody. Share it with your friends. The only way that this works is when we share it with everybody, and we can raise some money for our campaign. So that's what I wanted to show you. And now I'd like to introduce our very special guest here this afternoon. Yeah, still afternoon. When I asked Ian to help us out, I was so pleased when he enthusiastically said yes, believes in this campaign very much. So that, many of you already recognize Ian Capstick from his long-standing position on the CBC's Power and Politics. He has over a decade of professional political communications experience, has worked for cabinet ministers and opposition members in the House of Commons. He's a political tactician and was the former aide and press secretary to Jack Layton, and before that, Sheila Copps. He was named Extra's Canada's Political Activist of the Year in their annual Hero Awards. And he sits on the board of directors for Forum for Young Canadians, is an active advisor to Lead Now, who we all know, and chairs the Ottawa LGBTQ Village Committee. Ian's a solid supporter, as I said, of proportional representation and is passionate about creating social change, and it is a pleasure to welcome him here to our stage.
I'm going to move around. In fact, I'm going to get out from behind a podium because I'm sure y'all have had enough of people talking to you from behind podiums. If I squelch a microphone, I apologize. Thank you so much for such a warm introduction, and thank you. So we can put the website back up there. I like the idea that they're staring at that. Thank you so much for such a warm introduction. I am a huge supporter of proportional representation. Let me be even more specific than that. I'm a huge supporter of the version of proportional representation that Fair Vote Canada has for a long time advocated. I have been slowly but surely getting angrier and angrier, as I think many of people in this movement have. So, normally off the top of my speeches, I'm able to bring greetings from lots of different people. I can't today. And I'm sorry. There are very few people who support this movement. Even people who claim they support this movement don't. You have political supporters sitting in front of you today. You've had political parties for the past 20 years have proportional representation or some form of voting reform sitting in their platforms. Yet what have they done? Every single time they had the chance. Nothing. Worse. Less than nothing. They actively campaigned against it. I'm disgusted by the BC New Democrats. I'm angry with the Ontario New Democrats. In PEI, they're just too small to matter. And I'm pissed about it. I'm not happy about it. We've had time and time and time again, and we've failed to be able to communicate to our political leaders why this needs to happen. Evidence? The Unfair Election Act. A totalitarian piece of garbage if you've ever seen one. You hear it in my voice, I'm angry about it. It's not just anti-democratic, it's unconstitutional. And the Conservatives did what they always do, they played a red herring game with politicians. They packed that bill filled with so many horrible little pieces that when they finally came around to listening to every single expert in this country, including our former Auditor General, former Chief Electoral Officers, countless officers of the House, only then, when they finally amended it, did we all in the political sphere go, well, I guess it's kind of okay now. It's not. It's not okay. This bill's not okay. It shouldn't pass. But it's going to. Why? Because we're apathetic as a country. We're not voting. I heard one of your previous speakers say he doesn't believe in mandatory voting. I do. Make a vote. God, at least then somebody else will pay attention to what's going on. This level of frustration has been building within a lot of you, I think. It's been building within me. But I'm not going to be frustrated and angry, I swear, this entire speech. I want to get through that. I want to get to the hope and the optimism side of things. Because I am a Jack Layton, Olivia Chow New Democrat. Let's be really, really blunt. That's where I come from. But even with Jack, I used to get angry with him on a regular basis. We'd go into Lauren Calvert's office, or we'd go into Daryl Dexter's office. And I'd say something like, are we going to talk to them about PR? You go, public relations? No, Jack. Are we going to try and convince one of these provincial parties to actually support proportional representation? It's kind of tough. I don't know, you don't want to hear that. You don't want to hear that. But that, my friends, is the reality. When you tell them you're a member of Fair Vote, they're going to say, I support proportional representation. And the next line out of your mouth should be, prove it. Prove it.
Brings it, brother.
Right? What have you done for me lately? It needs to be something that this movement asks itself. But this movement also needs to look inside itself. And here is the tough love portion of this speech. There aren't enough of you in this room. There just aren't. There aren't enough members of Fair Vote Canada overall. And I apologize, I haven't been an active member. I don't think I'm a member right now. That's a problem. When you have somebody like me who spent 5 years on television actively preaching for voting reform, and I'm not a member of your organization, this is a problem. How many other people in this country are active supporters of proportional representation or some form of voting reform? Tons that we don't know about because we're not big enough yet. Fair Vote Canada has about 1,000 members, and they're seeking to get about 100,000 email addresses before the next election. What's 1% of the Canadian population? 350,000. That's some tough numbers, folks. So how are we going to fix that? This is part of it, but it's not the end of it, right? And this is what I'm really here to talk to you folks about. I want to lay down some fundamental communications precepts and ideas and fundamentals with how media style and myself over the past 5 years, and previous to that 10 years in politics, have been able to win, right? So I like to joke that I don't come from the, sorry, I'm going to pull a Jack Layton blatant trick here and just take off this hot plate. I like to joke that I don't come from the left of the New Democrats or the right of the New Democrats. I come from the winning side of the New Democrats. It's a small, small wing. It's a small, small wing. We're good at losing. We are so good at losing. We are righteous when we do it, and we're right. But we have to win, and how do we win? How do we actually accomplish these things? I think there are a couple of fundamentals that we need to keep in mind. First and foremost, we mix up and have a regular problem of mixing up strategy versus tactics, right? So strategy happens above the head, tactics happens below. I'm going to leave the other analogies in which that happens to be true as well aside. But nonetheless, strategy happens above the head and tactics happen below. Far too many people want to be strategists. Far too many people want to be public policy experts. So my first and foremost lesson to most people in the fair voting movement, stop caring so much about policy, okay? It's kind of useless. You already know it already. The studies have been done. You know the facts. The facts aren't changing. The places that have proportional representation or fairer voting have better governance. That's not going to change. So stop spending all of your time examining how that's going to change and focusing on the public policy, but making people understand that and boil it down to some real basics. Not all votes count. That sucks, comma, A, period. Okay? Like, we learned this lesson in 2004 with Jack Layton, that when we attempted to put in 10 priorities for Canadians that we would put together for a progressive Canada, nobody, let alone me, as the campaign press secretary, could remember all 10 items. So, and again, I find this to be the case with a lot of cerebral style movements like yours that have a lot of thinking and a lot of academic behind it, is just boil it down to what really matters the most for Canadians right now. What matters most right now is that a province that, is there anybody here from PEI? I'm so sorry about to do this.
Oh, yeah.
I'm so sorry. You shouldn't be a province anymore. You're like the quarter the size of Markham, not even. You're an eighth of the size of Markham. You get 4 members of parliament. That's crazy. But we don't talk like this. Why? Blah, 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 Constitution, so on and so forth. We have to come up with a system that actually works and makes sense for all of these various places. But we don't want to talk like this because it hurts people's feelings sometimes, right? So we need to boil it down, and sometimes the worst thing that we do is we clutter it up with a whole bunch of facts that are kind of not entirely relevant to the conversation. Sure, PR and voting reform is going to do a ton of great things for our country. I have absolutely no doubt about that. But if you can't convince people at the very fundamental that their vote doesn't count equally to everybody else's vote, you've lost every other argument. Because when you're explaining, you're losing. Again, 2004, Jack Layton election, we learned that one. Y'all remember that debate? Not a good experience, my friends. Probably one of the single worst experiences of my life. Maybe his. Definitely his. He smiled through the entire debate, and he tried to deliver public policy messages that were so earnest that people didn't believe them. They couldn't believe them because it wasn't authentic and it wasn't real. And oftentimes when we try and communicate things like fair voting, we take it off into a realm of theory as opposed to reality. And the reality is right now that you're being poorly represented. You know that. The vast majority of Canadians know that. They don't vote. Why do you think they don't vote? If they were being properly represented, they would vote. They're not being properly represented, so therefore they turn off to the political system. So how do you turn them back on? Well, there's a couple different things. Like I said, strategy above the head, tactics below the head. Stop thinking strategically. You know what your strategy is. You have it, it's done, it's right up there. That's why I asked for it to be put up. Ah, there it is, folks. Your strategy is done. Let's make 2015 the last unfair election. Shh. It's not going to happen. Okay. Shh. Don't tell anybody outside this room, but it's not going to happen. We're going to have another couple unfair elections, and it's going to suck. But we're going to incrementally get there, piece by piece by piece, right? But this is a good rallying point. But let's be realistic about it. This is a good rallying point, right? So let's make 2015 the last unfair election. That's the strategy. It's already done. Stop thinking about it. Stop overcomplicating it and come up with a whole bunch of tactics to support that strategy. Those tactics must be smart. S-M-A-R-T, not S-M-R-T. That's from The Simpsons. S-M-R-T. Anyway, smart. Smart goals. Anybody know those? Specific, measurable, attainable, time sensitive. Realistic. That's up. You were good at segue, Sin. You were good. That's where I was going. I was like, SMR, you get it? Now the R is realistic. So let's be realistic about some of our goals. I want each and every one of you to think about how many people you're going to sign up for the Fair Vote movement. Okay? No, sign up, not the declaration. I could care less about a declaration. That's an email list on the list. You know what? Lead now has over 1 million names on their list. Ouch, just saying. Right? So I don't care about it. I'm going to be honest. Members pay, members vote. Those are good people. They will volunteer. You need those people. It's easy to sign a declaration. How many petitions I've signed in my life? A Burma, sweatshops, lower taxes, higher taxes. Anything the CCPA sends me, I'll sign it, sure. How many of those things do I actually work for? How many of those things do I actually care about? Those nice charity muggers, that's what I call them on the sidewalk. You know, those are supposed to make me care about Care Canada for about 30 seconds. I'm like, I love Care Canada. I don't know anybody who works there. It's not my thing, I care about Canada. And then I realized, oh wait a minute, this isn't what I want. You need to find the people who do want the change that you are offering. The change that you're offering is there. It's available. We have lots of commitments from lots of politicians that are floating around that just need to be connected together. And then in the 2015 election, we need to regularly and consistently demand action from the politicians who put it in their platforms. But beyond the action that we regularly ask for, we need them to commit to pushing provincial governments to pass voting reform. We need them to talk to their municipal governments about passing voting reform. And my friends, that's where I'm going to get into my citizen superheroes. Some of you will know Dave Meslin, right? Who knows Dave? Yeah, you should know Dave because he's an incredible stalwart of this particular movement, voting reform in general. And he's also a guy who literally destroys fences. I call him the citizen superhero. He's one of 3 that I'm going to feature today. Dave Meslin operates an organization that's kind of ad hoc that literally rips down fences from people's front yards in Toronto. I don't know if folks knew that. Most people know him from the Rabbit movement, which is the ranked ballots movement, or previous to that his work with Fair Vote, or previous to that his work on a variety of different referenda. So Rabbit, the ranked ballot initiative, is really interesting to me because it's not traditionally what you would expect from a proportional representation or voting reform, but it's incremental, and it's different, and it's well branded, and he has cross-party support. And that's interesting to me because he's approached this in a way that's a little bit different. He's approached this in a way that isn't as dogmatic, and he got in really big trouble right after the last election because he said he was going to work with Rob Ford. Lots of people got angry at it. And I sent him a note that said, good for you. Because if you're going to save bike lanes, which is one of his other big, big passions, then you're going to need to work with your political opponents. So I think him, as an individual, has some awesome superhero characteristics. So he becomes one of my citizen superheroes. For his branding, for his flexibility, for his willingness to be a maverick and get himself in trouble. Just kind of like me. There's somebody else who is really interesting to me, a guy who supports proportional representation, and I want to see if we can maybe push him to do this on a more municipal level because he's recently attained a position of power. Anybody from Edmonton? My hometown? Don Iveson. So a great guy. I worked with Don. Don's a good friend of mine from university, and Don, I call him a citizen superhero because he's like the non-partisan progressive in the oil patch. Like, people get it, Edmonton's a little bit more progressive, but what he's been able to do in the riding that in the ward rather, that he first represented as a city councillor, at the university in which he was a student leader, at the campus paper in which he was an editor, in the Canadian University Press, in which he was the president, and that's where I got to know him really well when we organized a conference together and operated the John H. Macdonald Journalism Foundation. And he's a collaborator. I've never seen anybody able to take people of all different stripes in politics, from all different backgrounds, cultures, and bring them together for a common cause. Which happened to be his election, kind of self-serving, I know, but nonetheless, he's doing some pretty awesome things for Edmonton. And again, just like with Dave, you know, you're not going to love everything that Mayor Iveson is going to do. But the citizen superhero qualities that I think he has is that collaboration, of keeping an open mind to having allies that are not traditional. And the last one's kind of interesting to me. It's One of my favorite ones, it's a woman named Jessie Jollymore. Anybody know, anybody from Halifax? Nova Scotia? No? Hope Blooms, some of you may know this. Any Dragon's Den fans? I'm a Dragon's Den fan. I'm not gonna lie, I love it. I do, it's awesome. Mostly because I get angry at Kevin O'Leary. Like, you're a horrible person. It's good for my blood pressure, not at all. Hope Blooms was the community garden in Halifax that was featured on Dragon's Den. I'm not seeing any nods here, but it was pretty cool. So what they basically did about 7 years ago or so is that Jessie Jollymore realized, as she was working on food security issues in Halifax, that if she didn't operationalize the issue of food security, nobody was going to really get it, right? So she could go around and say, plant a garden, you should have a garden, you should have a garden. But unless she actually built the first community garden, people wouldn't understand how much money that could then save them, and then how much more secure, literally, their food system would be. In other words, they're not now relying on multinationals or even interprovincial major farming organizations. They're growing it themselves. So what they did was the city gave them a lot of abandoned land, and then everybody told her not to do it. Like, everybody told this woman, don't do this. This is bad. It's going to get vandalized. You're going to get destroyed. People are going to pee in your garden. That was one of her favorites. People are going to pee in your garden. And she did it anyway. And she put up a fence, and they painted the fence. All the kids painted the fence, right? And they put up signs in the kids' handwriting. It was like, please don't pee in my garden. And then they figured out that they needed to keep these vegetables longer than just, of course, the short Halifax summer months, so they started converting them into salad dressings. And the salad dressings are starting to convert into money, and the money is now being used to support the community center that spawned this whole thing with Jessie. And one step further than that, they leveraged, and this is their citizen superpower is leverage. You know, so from the very beginning, she leveraged her role as, you know, a very small grant in food security. She leveraged that to building a community garden with the city of Halifax. She leveraged that small success into getting more money from them. Then she leveraged that to get onto the CBC, onto Dragon's Den, and in front of literally 5 of Canada's most wealthy individuals, and 4 of them, guess which one didn't? Just gave them money. And said, we're going to help you grow this salad dressing business so that we can put more money back into the north end of Halifax. And that's an incredible story, because I think that you can take some of those lessons for the fair voting movement. Right? So she had flexibility and she had leverage. And she thought about the issue of food security not in a theoretical way or an academic way, which you could, and in fact she probably does. She's a master's degree in food issues, but rather in a very practical way. She's a dyed-the-wool socialist like me, and she's busy running a capitalistic e-business for good. So through those 3 people, really what I want to bring together is a couple of different core ideas about these sort of citizen superhero skills that I think you have. Then we'll turn it over to a Q&A. Again, through Dave, he's a maverick. He's willing to do things differently than anybody else is willing to do them, and he's willing to brand things and be effective about how he's placing his focus. Controversial? Yes. Effective? Most definitely. I take a look at something like the Rabbit campaign, and I've never seen anybody who's been able to bring that many political parties together on something like voting reform. With a lot of young legislators, which is really, really interesting to me. Through Hope and Bloom, the power of leverage. Not levitation, those are for the yogis, they don't run anymore. Do you remember they used to run? I used to love that. Seriously, as a kid, that was my absolute favorite. It was like, natural law party, how many did they get? I love them! Anyway, I think that's why I love proportional representation, for this hope that one day we have a flying yogi in Parliament. Like, how awesome would that be, off in the corner somewhere bouncing on a mattress? I'm over here, representing crazy people. Anyway, I'm sorry. Total aside. This is the only room in the whole world will find that funny, by the way. Everybody else is like, what are you talking about? But then, of course, I have this image of, like, the rhino party just going wild behind the curtains, just like, look. Anyway, I think proportional representation would make the House of Commons a lot more fun. It really would, because it's a horrible place right now. Anyway, the lessons that Dawn Iveson brings as a citizen superhero is one of collaboration and cross-party collaboration. And recognizing that even though that you may not agree on every single little issue, you can come together and move forward on something. So in essence, what I really want to do today is remind you that this movement can't grow without you. You have trekked all the way here. This is impressive. That there's no one from BC here and your annual general meeting was there last year worries me. So, I'm sounding these notes of caution out of love, out of my hope that you take each and every one of the small lessons that I've been able to give you today, and the time that we have together in the question and answer period, to maybe solve a few communications issues that you may be facing. How to get more people involved. How to convince people to talk to their legislators. How to convince legislators to follow through on their actions. I don't have all the answers, and I don't pretend that everything that I said today is right or accurate. Because I'm a pundit. That would be really limiting people. And nor do I think that in the long term, people's opinions need to remain the exact same all the time. We can evolve. And I think that that is where I'll end this particular talk, is that that's truly, for me, what fairer voting in Canada means can be possible. A lot of you may have noticed in the introduction that I used to work for Sheila Copps. I was a Liberal. And then I moved over to the New Democratic Party. And if I had to be blunt and honest, I'm probably not at home, truly, in either of those particular places. I'm a fiscal conservative libertarian who believes you should legalize all drugs. And that PEI shouldn't be promised. Not traditionally, a Tommy Douglas New Democrat, folks, right? I believe in the natural resources sector. I fall on that side of the union divide. So is there a party that could be exactly me? I don't know, because right now there's absolutely no opportunity for those parties to exist. We have a whole bunch of mainline parties in which we're forced into, and within those parties, the party discipline is so strong that if you step out marginally on either side of where you should be, you get slapped back by not only your political party, but by the media at the exact same time. So what will proportional representation do? It will fix that. I've done this now, I can't believe I'm saying this out loud. Jeepers, I've been doing this professionally since I was 18 years old. I've seen 4, 5 prime ministers. I've met and interviewed every living prime minister. I'm an expert in Canadian politics and communications. But I have never been more depressed than I am right now about the state of politics in Canada. And you're the answer to fixing this. Okay? So please, dear God, help us find more of you. We need you, because you are the answer to this. This is the room whose shoulders this movement stands on. Because if you stuck it out in this beautiful, beautiful Ottawa day, and you didn't head yourself down to the market and sit just sitting inside of the Social Sciences building at the University of Ottawa, listening to me blather on about proportional representation, you care, and dear God, you're the only ones who do. So, what do you do tomorrow? What do you do next week? What do you do before 2015 that takes this movement from where it is today, in its infancy still, and brings it through some level of maturity so that in 2015, each and every one of you can stand in front of a politician and say, what are you going to do for me? So, thank you, and we'll turn to a Q&A.